Welcome to Whispering Archives, where history doesn't just speak, it whispers across the centuries. Imagine standing in front of a crowd, a rough rope scratching your neck, the trapdoor opens beneath our feet, and darkness swallows everything. For most people, that moment is the absolute end, but for a few, a rare, terrifying few, that wasn't the end. They walked back from death itself. Tonight, we're exploring the strangest, most unbelievable true stories of people who survived their own hanging. These are tales from Scotland, England, and the United States, stories so bizarre that the law itself didn't know what to do next. Are you ready? Let's begin. Our first story takes us to Scotland in 1724, to a woman named Margaret Dixon. The people called her a criminal, the court found her guilty, and the entire city of Edinburgh gathered to watch her body swing from the gallows. After she was pronounced dead, she was cut down, placed into a simple wooden coffin, and carted away for burial. But as the men moved the coffin along the road, they heard a sound, a quiet knocking from inside. Confused and terrified, they pried open the lid. There was Margaret, gasping for air, fighting her way back from the dead. At that time, Scottish law was surprisingly clear on this matter. If you survived your own execution, you were free to go. The sentence had been carried out. From that day on, she was known throughout the land by a new name, Half-Hanged Maggie. She had cheated the hangman, and the law had to let her walk. Next, we travel to England in the year 1650 to meet a young woman named Anne Green, and was a servant, wrongly accused of murdering a baby that was actually born prematurely and didn't survive. Despite her pleas of innocence, she was sentenced to hang. She was executed, declared dead, and her body was delivered to a group of doctors at Oxford University for dissection, a common practice at the time. As one of the doctors leaned in to make the first incision, he heard a faint, rattling sound from her throat. Another doctor, checking for any final signs of life, felt a weak breath against her lips. Incredibly, Anne Green was still alive. For hours, the doctors worked not to dissect her, but to save her, warming her body, rubbing her limbs, and trying to revive her. When she finally opened her eyes, the room fell silent in shock. Just like with Margaret Dixon, English law had a principle against double jeopardy. You cannot execute the same person twice for the same crime. Anne was pardoned and went on to live for many more years, a walking, breathing miracle. Our third tale is perhaps the most mysterious of all. It's the story of John Abercrombie Lee, from England in 1885. John was convicted of murder and sentenced to hang. He wasn't supposed to walk away. He was led to the gallows and stood on the trapdoor. The executioner pulled the lever. Nothing happened. The wood didn't budge. They checked the mechanism, brought him off, and tested it. It worked perfectly. So, they put him back on the trapdoor and pulled the lever again. Still nothing. A third time the trapdoor refused to open. It was as if some unseen force was holding it shut. But only when John Lee stood upon it. The gallows had worked flawlessly for everyone else. Finally, the prison officials gave up. The judge, baffled, announced, "It seems heaven has said no." John Lee's sentence was commuted to life in prison. He would forever be known by his new title, the man they couldn't hang. Finally, we crossed the Atlantic to the United States in 1740. A young man named William Duell was hanged in New York for a heinous crime. The crowd watched as he went limp, and after the prescribed time, his body was cut down. Like Anne Green, his body was taken to a surgeon's hall for dissection. But as the doctors began to cut away his clothes, they saw his chest move. William suddenly started breathing again, gasping for air like someone waking from a terrible nightmare. The city was in an uproar. What do you do with a man who has already been executed? The law had never imagined such a scenario. Ultimately, mercy won out. He was granted a pardon, and his sentence was changed. He was a boy who technically died on the gallows, and yet lived to tell the tale. They all felt the rope tighten. They all stepped into the darkness of death. But somehow, for each of them, the noose let go. Was it just dumb luck? Were they protected by a higher power or a twist of fate? Or was it something else, something the world couldn't explain, then or now? History is filled with these whispers from the edge of life and death. If you want a second episode with even more strange executions and near-death stories, let me know in the comments. There are so many more secrets hiding in the shadows. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe to Whispering Archives for more stories that history tried to forget.